I heard Marcus laugh, that particular laugh he reserved for impressing investors, and my hand tightened around my champagne glass. "This is my wife, Sarah," he was saying to a cluster of men in expensive suits. "She stays home and does some art stuff online. Nothing serious." 3 days later, I stood in front of those same men with a presentation that would cost him everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Miami sun was brutal that afternoon, glinting off the infinity pool at Marcus's company's 5-year anniversary celebration. Thompson and Associates Real Estate Development had grown from a 2-person operation to a firm managing $40 million in properties across South Florida. Marcus loved reminding people of this fact. Frequently, I'd worn the cream linen dress he liked, the one that made me look elegant but not threatening. That was important to Marcus. I'd learned that 3 years into our marriage, when I'd shown up to a client dinner in a red power suit. He'd barely spoken to me the entire evening, then spent the drive home explaining how I'd made everything about myself instead of supporting him. So, cream linen, minimal jewelry, the perfect developer's wife. Art stuff, Vanessa Rodriguez chimed in, her hand resting possessively on the back of Marcus's chair. She was his interior designer, or so I'd been told when he'd started mentioning her name 6 months ago. "Oh, how nice. Like a hobby. Marcus always talks about how supportive he is of your little projects." I smiled. I'd gotten very good at smiling over the past 2 years. "It keeps me busy," I said, taking a photo of Marcus with his business partners as requested. "Congratulations on the anniversary, honey. I'm going to head out. Lily has soccer practice at 4. Always running off to kid stuff," Marcus said to the investors, shaking his head with fond exasperation. "That's motherhood, right?" The men chuckled. Vanessa touched his shoulder. I walked to my car, got in, and sat there for 10 minutes with the AC blasting, willing my hands to stop shaking. My art stuff. My little projects. What Marcus didn't mention, what he never mentioned, was that my art stuff had brought in $180,000 last year. That my client roster included 3 Fortune 500 companies. That I'd paid for Lily's private school tuition entirely from my business account because Marcus's firm was reinvesting for growth. He didn't mention it because I'd learned to stop mentioning it. Because the one time I'd excitedly told him about landing the Meridian Hotel's contract, he'd gone silent for 2 days, then picked a fight about how I never had time for him anymore now that I was so focused on work. I'd made a choice after that. Let him think he's the breadwinner. Let him introduce me as the little wife with her little hobby. Let him underestimate me. Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. The pattern started small. Marcus began working late more frequently, always Tuesday and Thursday nights. He'd started going to the gym at odd hours. His phone developed a password I didn't know. Classic signs, textbook really, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Then came the properties. See, Marcus liked to talk about his deals over dinner. It was his favorite topic. He'd walk me through every acquisition, every renovation, every flip. I'd learned more about South Florida real estate than I'd ever wanted to know, but I listened. I always listened. So when he casually mentioned touring a condo in Brickell that didn't fit any of our current projects, I noticed. When he spent a Saturday checking out a waterfront lot in Miami Beach that was outside our usual investment range, I noticed that too. Marcus was careful. But I knew his patterns better than he realized. I didn't snoop through his phone. I didn't need to. Marcus ran Thompson and Associates from a cloud-based system that he'd added me to years ago, back when the company was just starting and he'd needed me to handle invoicing while managing our newborn. He'd never removed my access. Why would he? I was just the wife doing art stuff. It took me 15 minutes to find the folder. V&M Development Ventures. Not Thompson and Associates. Not any entity I recognized. A separate folder, meticulously organized, containing 2 years of email threads, property contracts, and financial documents. Vanessa Martinez, interior designer, was listed as co-owner on 7 properties. Total value, $3.2 million. My hands went numb. I clicked through the documents mechanically. Purchase agreements dating back 22 months, renovation budgets, rental income projections. And there, buried in the email threads, "Can't wait to see you tonight, V. Our little empire is looking good. Our little empire." I should have felt something. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak. Instead, I felt oddly calm, clinical, like I was reviewing a design brief from a client rather than evidence of my husband's affair. I kept clicking. The properties had been purchased with wire transfers from Thompson and Associates operating account, the same account Marcus's investors had capitalized. The same account that Daniel Kim, venture capitalist and lead investor, had poured $2 million into last year. This wasn't just an affair. This was embezzlement. I took screenshots, downloaded files, created a separate encrypted folder on my personal laptop. Then I closed everything, cleared my browsing history, and went to pick up Lily from school. "Mom, you okay?" Lily asked from the back seat, still in her soccer uniform. "You're quiet." "Just thinking about a work project, baby," I said, watching her in the rearview mirror. 8 years old, gap-toothed smile, Marcus's dark eyes. She adored her father. He'd take her for ice cream on Saturdays, let her pick paint colors for his flip houses, called her his little business partner. Whatever he'd done to me, he was still her father. But that didn't mean he got to steal from investors and build a secret real estate portfolio with his mistress while calling my six-figure business art stuff. I spent the next 2 weeks building my case. Not emotionally, I'd learned to compartmentalize, but systematically. Every designer knows the importance of proper presentation. The right fonts, the right color scheme, the right flow of information. I created a presentation deck titled Investment Opportunity Analysis, V&M Development Ventures. Slides 1 through 5 introduce the property portfolio as a legitimate business opportunity. Professional photos I pulled from the listing sites. Revenue projections. Market analysis. It looked like every other real estate pitch deck Marcus had ever shown investors. Slides 6 through 10 showed the financial breakdown. Wire transfer records from Thompson and Associates to property acquisitions. Every transaction dated and sourced. The money trail was clear. Company funds were being diverted to personal purchases. Slides 11 through 15 contained property ownership documents. Vanessa Martinez's signature appeared on every deed, right next to Marcus Thompson's. Sometimes she signed as Vanessa Rodriguez Martinez. I assumed Rodriguez was her married name. Either way, these weren't company assets. They were personal holdings. Slides 16 through 20 got personal. Email threads, text message screenshots I'd found in the cloud backup. Photos from property visits where Marcus and Vanessa were standing very close, his hand on her lower back, her head tilted toward his shoulder. Timeline documentation showing the affair had been running for 2 years. The final slide was simple. Questions? I'm happy to clarify any financial discrepancies. I saved it. Backed it up 3 different ways, and waited. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. Marcus bounded into the house, grinning. "Quarterly board meeting next Thursday," he announced. "Daniel wants a full investor presentation. Show everyone how well the company's performing." "That's wonderful," I said, chopping vegetables for dinner. "You should come," he said, kissing my temple. "Bring Lily. Show everyone the supportive family. Investors eat that stuff up. I'm not sure Lily should miss school." "Come on, Sarah. It's important to me. You can bring your laptop. Work on your art stuff in the back if you get bored during the financial reports." "My art stuff?" I smiled. "Of course. I'd love to be there. That's my girl." He patted my shoulder and headed to his office. I returned to my vegetables, blade moving in steady, even strokes. Dice, dice, dice. Methodical. Precise. The Thompson and Associates conference room overlooked Biscayne Bay, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern minimalism. Marcus had spared no expense on the space. It projected success, stability, growth. 7 investors sat around the marble table, including Daniel Kim at the head. Vanessa was there too, presenting some design updates for upcoming properties. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Marcus didn't introduce us. Why would he? We'd never met, as far as he knew. I sat in the back with my laptop, exactly where Marcus expected me to be. Lily was at school. I'd decided that morning she didn't need to see what was about to happen. Some things children shouldn't witness. The meeting progressed. Financial reports, market analysis, growth projections. Marcus was in his element, commanding the room with easy confidence. Daniel asked sharp questions. The other investors nodded approvingly. "Before we wrap up," Marcus said, checking his watch, "I want to thank you all for 5 incredible years. Thompson and Associates wouldn't exist without your trust and capital. Here's to the next 5 years being even better." He raised his water glass. The investors followed suit. Actually, I said from the back of the room, standing up, if we have a few more minutes, I'd love to share a project Marcus has been working on. Something I think the investors should know about. Marcus's head whipped around. Sarah. What? It'll just take 10 minutes, I said, already connecting my laptop to the conference room display. Marcus invited me to be supportive, and I found this particular venture fascinating. I think you all will too. Daniel leaned back in his chair, curious. The other investors shifted to face the screen. Vanessa had gone very still. This is a presentation about V&M Development Ventures, I began, clicking to the first slide. Professional photo of a waterfront condo, sleek and modern. A property portfolio that's been built over the past 2 years. 7 properties, total value of $3.2 million. Impressive, right? I clicked to the second slide. Revenue projections, rental income, market positioning. The properties are well chosen. Brickell, Miami Beach, Coconut Grove, prime locations with strong appreciation potential. Whoever put this together knows the South Florida market. Marcus had half risen from his seat. Sarah, this isn't. Let her finish, Daniel said quietly. His eyes were on the screen, sharp and assessing. Venture capitalists didn't get to where they were by missing details. I clicked to slide 6. Here's where it gets interesting. The funding source. Wire transfer records filled the screen. These acquisitions were funded through Thompson & Associates operating account. 7 transactions over 22 months, totaling $2.8 million. The room had gone silent. Slide 7. But these properties aren't held by Thompson & Associates. They're not company assets. More documents. They're personally owned by Marcus Thompson and Vanessa Martinez. I looked at Vanessa. She was frozen, face pale. Vanessa Martinez, I continued, who I believe goes by Rodriguez in her personal life. You're married to Daniel Kim, correct? All eyes turned to Vanessa. Then to Daniel. His expression hadn't changed, but his knuckles were white where he gripped his pen. Sarah. Marcus's voice was strangled. Stop this right now. Why? I clicked to the next slide. Property deeds. Signatures clear. I'm just presenting information. You said investors eat up the supportive family angle. I'm being supportive. I'm showing them exactly what their capital funded. Slide 9. Email threads. V. Can't wait to see our Brickell property tonight. Our little empire is growing. Slide 10. More emails. Told Sarah I'm working late. Free until midnight. Slide 11. Photos. Marcus and Vanessa at property visits, standing close, intimate. Stop, Vanessa whispered. I didn't stop. Slide 12. Slide 13. 2 years of documented evidence. Every property visit. Every wire transfer. Every lie. The timeline is thorough, I said, my voice steady. Professional. Like I was presenting a design pitch. The affair began approximately 24 months ago, around the same time V&M Development Ventures was formed. The funding came from Thompson & Associates which, as you all know, is capitalized primarily by investor money. Daniel's $2 million investment from last year? Let me show you where that went. Slide 14. Financial flowchart. Clean, color-coded, impossible to misunderstand. Investor money in. Property purchases out. Personal ownership registered. This is embezzlement, one of the investors said flatly. Marcus was standing now, face red. You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a graphic designer, I said, meeting his eyes for the first time since I'd started presenting. I'm very good with documents. Details. Making sure all the information is clearly presented. It's what I do with my art stuff. Daniel had pulled out his phone, already making calls. The other investors were leaning in, examining the financial documents on screen. How long have you known? Vanessa asked me, her voice barely audible. Long enough to be thorough, I said. I clicked to the final slide. Questions? I'm happy to clarify any financial discrepancies. The room erupted. Daniel was on his feet, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire to what sounded like his lawyer. The other investors were demanding explanations, pulling up their own records, voices overlapping in anger. Marcus was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. I stayed home and did art stuff, I said quietly, just for him. Nothing serious. Remember? I closed my laptop, picked up my bag, and walked out. The legal fallout was immediate and comprehensive. By the time I picked Lily up from school that afternoon, Daniel had already filed complaints with the SEC and Florida's Real Estate Commission. By that evening, Marcus's lawyer was calling my phone. I let it go to voicemail. By the next morning, Thompson and Associates accounts were frozen pending investigation. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the satisfaction of watching everything collapse. The hardest part was sitting down with Lily that evening. "Baby, we need to talk about Dad." She was at the kitchen table, doing homework. She looked up, and I saw Marcus in her eyes, that same intensity, that focus. "Is he in trouble?" "Yes," I said, because I'd never lied to her. "He made some bad choices with his work. He's going to have to face consequences for that." "Are you guys getting divorced?" 8 years old, and already she'd learned to read the silences between her parents. "Yes," she nodded slowly, processing. "Are you sad?" "I'm sad that your dad made the choices he made," I said carefully. "But I'm not sad about our future. You and me, we're going to be just fine." Marcus fought for joint custody. Of course he did. But between the criminal charges and his lawyer's fees eating through his assets, most of which were now frozen or being claimed by defrauded investors, he eventually agreed to supervised visitation every other weekend. "Can I still call him?" Lily asked one night, about a month into our new normal. "Anytime you want," I told her. "Whatever happened between your dad and me, he's still your father. I won't ever stop you from having a relationship with him." She video called him that evening. I heard her chattering about school, about soccer, about a science project. I heard Marcus's voice, smaller somehow through the phone speaker, telling her he loved her. I meant what I told her. He was still her father. But she was also watching her mother build something new. Something that didn't require permission or approval. Something that was entirely mine. The investor who'd sat furthest from Marcus during my presentation called 2 weeks after the board meeting. His name was Robert Chen, no relation, unfortunately, though he found that funny. He ran a venture studio focused on creative technology. "That presentation was something else," he said. "Terrible circumstances, obviously. But the clarity of information, the visual design, the strategic timing, I've seen professional consultants with less polish." "Thank you," I said, unsure where this was going. "My studio is launching a new brand development division. We need a creative director who understands business strategy, not just aesthetics. Someone who can see the whole picture, present complex information clearly." He paused. "Someone who stays calm under pressure. Are you interested?" I was interested. The position came with a $200,000 salary plus equity. My office had a view of the Miami skyline. I hired 2 designers to work under me within the first month. By month 3, we'd signed 4 clients. Lily started bringing friends home after school. Our new apartment had a second bedroom big enough for sleepovers. It wasn't as big as the house with Marcus, but it was ours. Clean, untainted. The criminal proceedings dragged on. Marcus was facing fraud charges. Vanessa lost her interior design license pending investigation. Daniel divorced her within 6 weeks. I heard through the industry grapevine that he'd been ruthlessly thorough in the settlement, ensuring she left with nothing from their marriage. The properties the V&M empire were seized as assets in the criminal case. Most were sold to payback investors. One, ironically, ended up going to auction. A waterfront 2-bedroom in Coconut Grove, right on the bay. I bought it as part of my divorce settlement. The judge agreed it was fair compensation for years of diminished marital contributions while Marcus built his secret portfolio. Lily and I moved in on a Saturday. The apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, updated kitchen, fresh paint throughout. Vanessa had done the interior design. Actually, she had good taste. "This is ours?" Lily asked, running from room to room. "Like, actually ours?" "Actually ours," I confirmed. "What do you think?" "I think it's perfect." She pressed her face against the living room window, looking out at the bay. "Hey, Mom?" "Yeah, baby?" "At school, when kids ask what you do, what should I say?" I thought about that. Tell them I'm a creative director. I help companies tell their stories. "That's cool." She turned from the window. "Cooler than art stuff, right?" "Much cooler," I agreed. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I stood at those same windows with a glass of wine. The Miami skyline glittered across the water. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably in his lawyer's office, strategizing his defense. Somewhere, Vanessa was dealing with her own consequences. Somewhere, Daniel was building something new without either of them. And here I was, in an apartment I'd bought with my settlement money, working a job I'd earned with my skills, raising a daughter who was learning that her mother didn't need anyone's permission to be successful. I'd spent years letting Marcus introduce me as the woman who stayed home and did art stuff. I'd smiled through his dismissals, his casual cruelty, his public diminishment of everything I'd built. I'd let him underestimate me completely. And when the moment came, when he handed me the perfect opportunity by inviting me to his board meeting, I'd shown him exactly what this art stuff could do. My phone buzzed. An email from Robert. Client presentation went great. They loved your pitch. Nice work, boss. Boss. Creative director. Business owner. Mother. Survivor. Not just a woman who stayed home doing art stuff. Never just that. I raised my wine glass to the skyline, to the city, to whatever came next. To not being serious, I said aloud, smiling. The Miami lights twinkled back, and for the first time in years, I felt exactly where I was supposed to be.